Neil Armstrong. When you hear that name, you think of one thing, right? The moonwalk, that one incredible moment. But we focus so much on that single footprint that we kind of forget about the man who actually made it. So today, we're going to look past the moonwalk to really understand the experiences that shaped the first man on the moon. Let's dig into the story behind the legend.
Okay, picture this. It's July 20th, 1969. The entire planet is holding its breath. And then you hear these 9 words from Neil Armstrong. Humanity has made it to the moon. You can just imagine a sigh of relief back in mission control. One guy there even said, "You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again." But what the world didn't really get at that moment was just how incredibly close they came to not hearing those words at all.
Because inside the lander, during those final critical moments of descent, this is what Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were seeing: a flashing computer alarm, code 1202. It was an executive overload, which basically means the guidance computer was totally overloaded. It was freaking out. I mean, can you imagine? You're hurtling towards another world, and the machine you're supposed to trust with your life starts screaming that it can't handle the pressure.
And on top of the alarms, Armstrong had to take over manual control to steer the lander away from a huge field of boulders, burning through precious fuel second by second. So when they finally touched down, this is how much fuel they had left. 45 seconds. They were running on fumes. We're not talking about a thin margin for error here. We're talking about almost no margin for error. So that's the big question, right? How? How does any human being deal with failing computers, a fuel tank running on empty with the eyes of the entire world on you, and still manage to land a spacecraft on the moon? Well, the answer wasn't something he found in that moment. It was something he'd been building his entire life.
To really understand that landing, we have to understand the man himself, the man they said had ice in his veins, a man whose calm wasn't a personality trait, but something he earned through trial by absolute fire.
To see how Armstrong kept his cool, we've got to rewind the clock. His ability to handle that kind of pressure was forged way before he ever joined NASA. It started back when he was a combat pilot. So check this out. This jet is the F-9F Panther. During the Korean War, a very young Neil Armstrong was flying these things right off the deck of an aircraft carrier. He was a ground attack pilot, which was incredibly dangerous, high-stakes work that took unbelievable precision and guts.
And believe me, he saw plenty of action. This is how many combat missions he flew over Korea: 78. On one of those missions, his plane's wing got sliced by a booby trap cable strung across a valley. He had to nurse the plane back over friendly territory and eject. So yeah, this was a pilot who had stared death in the face long before he ever thought about going to the stars.
But you know, as absolutely intense as combat was, his next job was, believe it or not, even more dangerous. After the war, he became an experimental research test pilot out at Edwards Air Force Base. His resume from this time is just staggering. He didn't just fly 1 or 2 new planes. He flew over 200 different types. Bombers, the legendary Century Series fighters, you name it. And then there was the X-15, a literal rocket plane. He flew it 7 times, pushing it right to the edge of space at over 4,000 miles per hour. On one of those flights, he actually bounced off the atmosphere, overshot his landing strip by 40 miles, and had to somehow glide it back for a safe landing. This was like getting a PhD in crisis management at Mach 6.
And this talent for surviving the unsurvivable, it pretty much became his calling card when he joined the astronaut corps. His path to the moon was basically a series of near disasters that he calmly navigated.
Take his very first spaceflight, Gemini 8. He and Dave Scott pull off the first ever docking in space. A huge success. And then, disaster. A thruster on their ship gets stuck open. Their capsule starts to spin faster and faster until they're tumbling out of control once every single second. But Armstrong? He didn't panic. He just coolly used a different system, stabilized the craft, and brought them home.
And this quote from legendary flight director Gene Kranz, wow, it just says everything. He admitted that NASA's own training was wrong for that situation. Armstrong and Scott had to throw the book out and improvise, all while spinning wildly in the void. Their calm thinking literally rewrote the emergency procedures for NASA.
And if you thought that was a close call, get a load of this. Yeah, that's not some Hollywood special effect.
That is Neil Armstrong ejecting from a lunar landing training vehicle. They called it the Flying Bedstead, just a year before the moon mission. The thing went haywire and he punched out just 200 feet from the ground, seconds before it exploded into a fireball.
And right here, this is the key to his whole mindset. Most of us would be thinking, I almost died, and probably never go near a cockpit again. Armstrong saw it as crucial practice. He always insisted that without flying and crashing those terrifyingly difficult machines, he would never have been truly ready to land on the moon for real.
So now let's go back to the moon. When those 12:02 alarms were flashing and the fuel was almost gone, that wasn't some rookie pilot getting lucky. That was a seasoned veteran pulling from a lifetime of experience, from Korea, from the X-15, from the Gemini 8 spin, and from that fiery crash in Texas. And while all this is going on, who's watching? Oh, just an estimated 530 million people. The biggest TV audience in history up to that point. No pressure, right?
After everything he'd been through, he made it look effortless. He stepped onto the surface and delivered one of the most famous lines in all of human history. A line, by the way, that he said he didn't even come up with until after they were safely on the ground. The mission always came first.
But here's a heck of a question. Once you've walked on the moon, what do you do for the rest of your life? I mean, what's the encore to that? For Armstrong, the answer was not what anyone expected.
Armstrong never really cashed in on his fame. He pretty quickly stepped back from the public eye, which led a lot of people to think he was some kind of recluse. His own family called him a reluctant American hero. He was deeply proud of what he did, but he just never wanted the spotlight.
But calling him a recluse really misses the point. Private is a much better word. He didn't disappear, he just redirected his energy. He became a university professor, teaching aerospace engineering. He was called in to help investigate both the Apollo 13 and the Challenger accidents. He sat on corporate boards. He even went on an expedition to the North Pole. He never stopped exploring, he just stopped doing it with a camera crew around.
And I think this says it all. When he passed away in 2012, his family didn't ask for some huge, grand memorial. They made this simple request. And it just perfectly sums up the spirit of a man who did something absolutely monumental, but never lost his quiet, humble, down-to-earth perspective.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We celebrate him, and rightly so, for that one giant leap. But maybe his real legacy, the true measure of the man, is also found in all those quiet, humble, dignified steps he took for the rest of his life, proving that a hero's character isn't just defined by one moment of glory, but by a lifetime of humility that comes after.